Hi Scrubs, hope you're well. So this video is requested by Jyllian Grace and also by Count to the Moon, and they've asked me to talk about starting a horse-based YouTube channel. So I'm going to talk a little bit at first about how I got started, and also I'm going to talk about 10 more general points, which I think are kind of applicable maybe to any channel, not just horse, but I think there are things to bear in mind. So how I got started was, prior to VIP teams being a thing, I taught different players on horse, and it was usually individual. It was over PM, and I would be explaining how to do things. And this was, to help basically increase the knowledge in teams that I already had, or people who wanted to be in teams that I had, or in teams of my friends and so forth, and they just needed to learn a little bit more. And in the same way, I was taught by a player from International who I'm still friends with. So it got to a stage where I was sometimes trying to teach multiple people at the same time, and that wasn't always possible. And then we had the VIP teams emerged, and I created the first training team. And this basically was for people who had no prior experience, and I would bring them into the training team. We would use the forums, and I would put in information in there and guides and things like that, and then they could ask me questions, and they could also practice on team blops that were there purely for that training team. But after a while, I kind of realized that it didn't always work, because I was still trying to teach people individually, but suddenly I had a lot more people to teach. So that's when I thought maybe I should do a video. So I made a video, and there was no speech in it. It was purely text based, and I did a couple of those. And people then could watch them in their own time, and if they had any more questions, they could come back and ask me, which meant they could sort of learn at their own pace, really, and it was kind of easier that way. And it meant that I didn't have to sit down, and go through the same thing with maybe 20 or 40 people, because I think at one point I had 3 training teams in total, and that was about 60 people, and it was a lot of people to kind of work with. So it meant it kind of worked better for everybody. And after I did those first couple of videos that were purely text, people were asking me to speak, and that was a very big step for me. I wasn't really, I was terrified, to be completely honest, and that took a very, very long time to kind of go away. And even still now, sometimes I'm talking and I'm thinking to myself, just shush. But that's how I got started with the channel, and how eventually I started speaking my videos instead of just doing the text ones. Now, going into the 10 points, now these are maybe more general, but I will talk a little bit more about maybe being a bit more specific about horse afterwards. So I think one of the first things is to be consistent, and what I mean by this is, if you are going to be doing one video a week, or one video a day, or one video a month, make sure you stick to that. And the reason I say that is because if you aren't consistent, then people don't know when you're going to get more videos, and they may not know then when to come back and check. So when I first started, my videos were very irregular. They were whenever I got around to them. And as time went on, I tried to be a little bit more frequent in uploading them, and then it got to a point where I was making sure to do them every day, but they were going up at really random times of the day. Like one day you could have got one at 1 o'clock, and the next day you could have got it at 2 a.m. It was just really random. So eventually I thought to myself, right, I need to set a time that I'm going to put a video up. So I set it at 8 o'clock. Now, usually I make that. Now, sometimes I'm a little bit late with that, because sometimes it takes me longer to edit a video than I expected. So whenever you're starting out, if you are going to do 2 videos a week or 1 video a month, be consistent and let people know whenever it's going to be there, because then it means they're more likely to come back and check. So point 2 is know when something doesn't work. And the reason for this is, there's been many a time where I have started a video and I finished recording it and I listen back to it and I'm just not happy with it, and I think to myself, I can do that better. I can explain that better or change something. It doesn't have to necessarily be the whole video, but there has to be times, I think, whenever there's something you can make better than it was. And it's not to be, deleting every single video you do till you get it exactly perfect, because I don't think anything's ever perfect. But I think you need to know that you're happy with it. And also, I wouldn't just put things in for the sake of putting them in. Sometimes you're better cutting certain things out as well, to make the video better in general. So the third thing is, don't compare yourself to everybody else. And the reason I say that is because you have to bear in mind that everybody started with no subscribers. And it takes time for these things to build up, and you gotta have patience with it. So don't ever feel that, you don't beat yourself down, because the hardest subscribers are the first 100. That is like the slowest amount of time. That first 100 is the most difficult. So don't beat yourself up about that. The next thing is, think of what you enjoy doing and why. And I suppose this is very specific. If you're going to do a horse-based channel, is there a certain aspect of horse that maybe you're really, really passionate about? Maybe you want to focus on that to start with. Because I think it's always better to do videos about things you enjoy and that you're passionate about, because I think that will show through naturally. So that's one thing that I do think is important. And this is a big thing for me, I think, is the video quality. Now, sometimes, depending on what you have got to use to record, and that might not always be the best quality, but one of the things I actually do think is nearly more important sometimes in the video, in certain aspects, is the audio. I think if you're going to put audio on a video, make sure that there's as little background noise as possible, for example, especially if you're talking. Try and use a decent microphone. You don't have to go out and spend a ridiculous amount. You can get really good microphones for very little. But do look up about them and check out information and so forth, and make sure you go somewhere quiet as well if you're going to record, because I think it does make a lot of difference. And also don't be afraid to try and use something like Audacity, which is completely free to use, to help your audio a little bit and fix it, because I can watch a video, and I think a lot of us can watch a video if it's slightly poor quality in pixels and that, and the resolution. But if you watch a video with really, really bad audio, I think you're put off a lot quicker. Now, obviously, there's some times that you do kind of need to have reasonably sharp visuals, especially if you're pointing out something that visually people need to look at. So, don't be afraid if you're starting off with maybe not... you don't need the top end of anything, you really don't. It's just get yourself started and build up on the quality of your videos over time, because I look back at some of my old videos and I cringe, okay? So don't be put off by it. You don't need to go out and spend a fortune, you do not need to at all. So just use what you can and do the best that you can with what you've got. So the next thing is use sort of simple editing software, and there's no point in going out and spending £400, £500 on editing software. There really isn't. There are plenty of much, more reasonable softwares that you can use, or free softwares that do just as good a job. And some, operating systems come with those included. So start off with something simple, unless you're somebody who's already very good with editing software and you know what you're doing. I would just go with something that you can easily use and understand. And maybe in future, if you find that, no, actually you do want to go and get something a bit better, then you could do that. I mean, I started off with something really, really bog standard, simple QuickTime that was literally, you could trim it, the clips on it, and that was about it. Very, very, very simplistic. And then I moved up to something that was a little bit more, but it still does what I need it to do, and I've been using it ever since, and I think I've been using it ever since I started doing Star Stable, actually, which is Camtasia 2. I did a video about it on the channel somewhere, if anybody wants to have a look at it, and I find it's perfectly adequate for what I want to do. So, find software that's going to do what you need it to do, and don't go for anything really, really, extra unless you actually need it. Okay, so the next thing I would say is... be social, share and collaborate with people. Some of my earlier videos, I would have done the podcasts as well. I would like to do some of those again, because I really do enjoy doing them. And that was, me talking with some teammates and friends on Howrse about certain aspects of Howrse. And that was collaborating together, throwing around ideas, talking about different aspects and things like that. And that can be quite good to do, because you'll bring up things that maybe you wouldn't have on your own. So... things like that can be quite good to do. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be a podcast. It could be collaborating with another person that does YouTube, or maybe somebody that doesn't. Whenever I did my Raptor music video, that was just people out of my club on Star Stable, and they spent a couple of hours with me just shooting what we needed, and then I went and edited the video, and that was a really, really fun thing that we did when we collaborated on that. I had so much fun with that, and I know they did too. So the next thing is how much time do you have to spend? Now, I would say that when I first started out doing videos, I didn't need to spend a huge amount of time. I could pretty much record something, very, very quickly edit it, because as I said, I had very basic editing software there, and then upload it. And generally that was reasonably, quick, maybe an hour at most. If it was a longer video, it might have been a little bit more, but generally I didn't have to spend hours doing things. As time has gone on, when I did, like, as I mentioned, that Raptor music video, that took over 12 hours to get that from start to finish. And that didn't include all the pre-production kind of things where, deciding what shots we were going to take and whatnot. So I had to do all that beforehand, and then whenever we went on Star Stable, we had to say, okay, we're doing this, and we're going to shoot this, and we're going to shoot that. And then that maybe took 2 hours, I think, possibly 3, and then the rest of that was editing. So you can imagine that was a really long process. So it depends very much as well on the type of videos you're doing. If you're doing a lot of music videos, they take a really long time to edit. Other types of videos take a lot less. I mean, my Star Stable Let's Plays can take me up to 3 hours. Really long ones, maybe 4. But shorter ones, then, if I'm lucky, maybe an hour or 2. Some of my horse videos are maybe only 4 or 5 minutes, but it might take me about 20 minutes to half an hour to do those. So you need to be aware of the types of videos that you're doing as well, because they're gonna vary in how much time they take to make. Okay, so the next thing is negative comments, and I'm going to mention this because I think this is one thing that throws people off more than anything else. You have to be aware that you are going to get negative comments at one point or another. You might not get them for months, you might not get them for a lot longer, you might get them almost immediately. But this kind of thing leads me into my last point, and it's feedback, okay? Negative comments are still a feedback, okay? Now, some negative comments are going to be just hateful abuse, and there's no actual, critical or helpfulness from them, because you get negative comments sometimes which are actually really, really helpful. I remember one that was saying, this is quite a while back now, but somebody said they didn't like my audio. The audio, they couldn't really hear me in that. So I thought to myself, maybe she has a point. So I listened, to it, and I thought, can I make this better? That was one of those times where I thought, can I make my audio better? Can I find a better microphone? So I went looking for a better microphone, and I did find a better microphone, and as far as I remember, then I got feedback on that, and it was, yes, this is an improvement. So you don't necessarily always have to be like, oh, they hate my videos and I'm terrible or anything like that. You just have to be like, right, okay, that's negative, but can I do something about this? Can I make it better? So it's not always about taking it in a negative way and then just feeling negatively about it. It's taking that negativity and turning it into something positive. So that will happen sometimes. Obviously, as I said, there's going to be times where people just write hateful abuse, and just block it. Don't encourage it. Because I think if you allow a lot of negativity to go on in your comments, for example, it can spiral out of control, and there's some channels I can't bear to look at their comment section because of that, because people just get so nasty. And it's not even necessarily at the video, it's at each other in the comments, and I don't like that. I think it's pointless. Just because you're hiding behind a screen, you cannot say anything you want. Well, people will do it, but I just don't see the personal point of it. So, in general, I know a lot of these things are kind of more directed at channels in general, not specifically horse, but I think if you're going to do a horse one, if you're going to do, a video that's informational stuff, make sure you know all the information that you need before doing the video. Make sure you've got everything as factually correct as you have. Now, sometimes I work off stuff that's translated and it's not totally done yet, and sometimes I look at test server stuff which isn't set in stone. So always be aware of that and say that, because you don't want to say this is exactly what's happening and then Howrse might bring in a feature and it's not exactly what's happening. So you do have to be saying, this has the possibility to change or whatever, if you're working with something like that. It's different if it's already a feature on Howrse and it's there in black and white in the text, and you know this is exactly, you know, what's happening. But it's a bit different if you're working with something maybe on the test server or the spoiler thread, for example. But I think really you don't have to necessarily do a channel on all the aspects of Howrse. You may just want to focus on maybe drawing golden apple coats, because I know that's something that I haven't got to do in a really, really long time, and I'm almost nearly afraid to pick up my graphics tablet and try and draw again, because I just think it's going to be horrendous. But you know, find something that you want to focus on, and just do it well, I think, or do it to the best of your ability. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, as I said. And you'll improve over time. I mean, actually, if I look on Instagram sometimes, I see people who edit Star Stable pictures and things like that, or create maybe Howrse coats, and you can see the progress over time, how their skills have improved. And that's the thing, when you start something for the first time, you're not an expert in it, and you're not going to know everything, and you're learning all the time, because there's so much that I would love to learn, because I don't think I'm anywhere, you know, near the level of like skills wise there I'd like to be. You know, I'd like to get better at editing and things like that. So, you know, don't be afraid to kind of, you know, put out your work there and improve over it over time. So that's kind of my I guess advice. As I said, I'm not I'm not I don't feel in any way that I'm expert in this. I feel like I'm still very amateurish, and that's just kind of my experience. So I hope it's in some way helpful. So thank you to Jyllian Grace and also to Counter the Moon for requesting the video. I hope you had a lovely day, scrubs. Bye.